No, not
I
at
don't
all.
have enough stuff here.
Got 3 studios and everything, all that stuff.
See this place. Oh my gosh. It's just still an absolute mess. Like the place I'm actually building, which is really cool, which is still not ready, but will be ready soon.
We heard that last year.
Yeah, it's gonna be like
Yeah,
the
no, I know.
it's gonna be the
Some
Versailles of
point
hockey.
it is-
Will it be ready for the trade deadline?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
Oh,
Will it be
yeah,
ready
yeah.
for the trade deadline, Nick?
it will be ready.
Okay.
Oh yeah. No, it should be ready by the. I don't know. I'm not gonna put time limits on it.
yeah, it's probably better you don't.
But it looks good here. It looks fine here.
Well,
Without all my
I
crazy years.
I didn't want to break out the funeral dirge and properly put to rest the New York Jets, Mr. Cohen.
Oh,
But it's fun. It's funny because I traditionally and first of all, since it's the new year and it's the first Monday of January, everybody is back on TV and radio. Like all the hosts are back, all their holiday
I'm back.
done. All the news anchors are back, all the TV shows are back.
Mm-hmm.
Screw the holidays. I'm done with the holidays.
That sounds like Mike.
Well, the only thing I could say about that Jet game without really just getting totally ticked off is that it reminded me of the 81 wildcard game that I was at in person where I had an end zone seat, and that was actually the first win in Buffalo Bills playoff history. And it reminded me of that game, and that's about all I feel like saying about it.
No. They won before that, I thought.
No, I don't think they did.
They never won playoff games when OJ was there.
No, they never got to the playoffs when OJ was there.
Oh.
But I thought the previous
I think that was their first.
Okay.
But yeah, so you had a ringside seat for the Bill Simpson interception. There you go.
Yeah, luckily I was in the other part of the end zone, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was in the part of the end zone where Bruce Harper fumbled the ball with 1 second off the clock in the game, and Buffalo recovered for a touchdown. I was in that end zone.
But
I have
ironically,
no idea what you're talking about right now.
Ironically, New York radio is attacking they're not saying bemoaning the fact that Rex Ryan beat them. It's all on the Jets. Fitzpatrick sucks. Their offense was terrible. Their defense was terrible. It's all centered on the Jets and their failings, and not on the Bills actually playing. And I didn't watch the game. I only saw the highlights afterward. But it looked like the Bills played a pretty decent game in a game that really didn't mean anything.
That's how sports is reported pretty much now. The team that wins never gets any credit. It's always the team that loses that craps the bed. I call it the first take effect. No one ever gets any credit. It's always someone choking and failing.
No, you're right, but and it's funny because when I called my best friend before the game, there were 2 players I was worried about: Tyrod Taylor and Sammy Watkins. And if the Jets would have just paid attention to those 2, they'd have won the game.
Yeah, and they were saying Darrelle Revis possibly had his worst game as a pro.
He did, but they didn't have to keep going single coverage with him. He's not even the team leader in interceptions. They could have gone another way, but they didn't do it. That's it.
Yep. But now we have a month of NFL playoffs to talk about, and honestly now it's sort of like I've just lost a lot of interest in the NFL. And but I'll watch the playoffs as just sort of like theater, but it's like I have no rooting interest. I don't even root against like the New England Patriots, even though I don't like them. It's just it really, unless the Bills are involved, it has no meaning to me. So I don't know what it's going to be like in New York with the Giants and the Jets out, Russ.
Sadly, I'm pretty much that way too. And then I'm going over to a friend's house for the Super Bowl because she's a great cook. I admit it. That's why I'm going.
Smart. Yeah, it's a smart move.
And this is the wonderful thing. Now, with football in the playoffs, now I'm like 24/7 hockey. It's like
right.
Now it's I'm during the break. I've been going to a lot of Marlies games. I'm going to be going to some junior games in January. Weather depending.
Yep.
Obviously following the Leafs every game. So it's right now from now until the Stanley Cup final in June. It's going to be and the only interruption is going to be the stupid All-Star game, which we have to talk about the John Scott thing at some point.
The only thing I was going to finish up with is I was thinking about burning my Jets hat, and then I realized, like any other addict, I would just buy another one next year, and I don't want to give them any money, so I didn't. I left it alone.
Russ.
Yeah, you can't help. Listen, one team gets to win its final game, is what we say, So it's like it's that's the bottom line of sports. And I always, we're in soccer tournaments all the time with, the girls team I coach, and they're all in tears when they lose in tournaments. And you always say the same thing. It's like one team gets to win their final game, and that's the sucky part of sports. Like that really is. I mean, you get to, unless you don't make the playoffs and you win your final game, and no one cares about that game, so it doesn't matter.
You can tell in smaller NFL towns that football rules the roost. In Green Bay, like, there's nothing going on other than the game at the stadium, and when the Bills play, there is literally no traffic on the roads. And I'll tell you, I mean, back in the day, obviously this is 25 years ago when the Bills were in Super Bowls. You said something about burning your Jets hat. When they lost the third straight to Dallas, I was a fed-up fan, and I took the Bills jersey that I was wearing, walked out into the middle of Richmond Avenue in the city of Buffalo, and lit it on fire.
Well, speaking of that, I tried to give you, like, the greatest segue, because there were those Bills fans that did set themselves on fire.
Yeah. Yeah, check out Deadspin if you want to see a couple of drunk Buffalo morons burning themselves outside of Ralph Wilson Stadium. That's the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Don't set yourself on fire, kids.
Yeah, please. All right, that sounds like a good place to start.
Let's start the show.
Beck and I are in the same wavelength.
Yes. All right, it would be the 4th, right?
Yeah.
It is the 4th.
2016.
The 4th. Yeah. Just
first
another thing I can screw up.
The first business day of 2016.
Just another thing I can screw up every day. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, January 4th, 2016.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Dan Petcher.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. Sorry, I was caught off guard there for a second. Got a text just as that introduction was going on. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday in the afternoon. Today we're coming to you early, and we're going to stop right at 1 so we can get on with the USA-Russia game. So we're going to go 45 minutes here.
I mean, technically, we can go to 105 because they don't.
Yeah, we could go to 105.
That's true. We could go to 105, but you have like 40 errands to run in the first period of the game today. So, but we will be watching these games now. We've got to start with the World Juniors first. Then we will also get into the John Scott, the gate, and all that stuff.
And Jonathan Drouin too, because that's
there's plenty to go with today. So we'll do our best to whiz around here. But the first thing I want to start with, obviously, is the World Juniors, which is going on today. If you haven't watched, I don't want to spoil it, but turn off the show for a second and wait till I go like this.
Oh, please.
But
yeah, come on, everybody knows.
Finland has beaten Sweden 2-1, which was a good game. And honestly, a couple things I thought about this game. One, Finnish teams just know how to shut teams down. This is the specialty of that country.
Yep.
That just in general, they can play defense like no one's business, right? They know
how to be emotionless, and they know how to play defense.
Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. They're fine. No one's going to become a superstar. No one's going to try to make this superstar move. They're just all going to do the simple play all the time, up the boards all the time, out and clog the neutral zones. I mean, even in the big ice surface, clog the neutral zones. Because Sweden, in the beginning of that game, I don't know. I was watching the beginning of the game mostly. I saw until it was 2-1. I didn't see after that, but it didn't change the score. But Sweden looked like they were a year or two older than Finland. They were
playing every older player they had. They were matching up their older players against Lane and Puljujärvi, and it was working for a while. They were shutting down Finland for keeping them in their own end for a while, locking them in, like you said. But eventually, just they couldn't keep it going.
They're just such a big team. I mean, they're size-wise compared to Finland. There was no comparison. Go ahead, Dan.
I just wanted to ask Russ about Linus Soderstrom because he had such an eye-opening tournament, and you've seen him play more than I have. What have you seen from him after this tournament?
Well, that's the thing about him is I liked him going into the draft, but I realized he was dropping in the draft because he was a really skinny kid, and
right.
He was sort of like the backup in big tournaments, and so some people didn't really like him or know him. I thought this was a great tournament for him because he does look sturdier, stronger. His glove's good. He doesn't panic. Like, this is a terrific goalie prospect. And I had a feeling when the Islanders took him that he'd be, if not their top guy, one of their top guys. So, the Islanders have a couple of really good goalie prospects, and that's something they haven't had in a while.
No, it isn't.
I mean, Sweden got themselves in trouble in this game taking penalties. I mean, the Finnish power play is almost at 50% for this tournament. They've scored, I think, 12 power play goals. So, I mean, when you have I mean, easily the two of the three most dominant forwards in the tournament in Laine and Puljujarvi. And the funny thing is that, Russ, this game, it was their second power play that scored. It was Rantanen and Kapanen. Kapanen had 2 assists. I think Rantanen had a goal and an assist.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me with the Finnish team was when they started the tournament, and you guys remember I said, hey, I thought the best line would be Hintz with Puljujarvi and Laine. And then they pushed Hintz to the second line, and Hintz has now created his own line on that team, and they've been scoring pretty good. And Hintz had a nice goal himself. And so I think that has given them more depth than I think we all realized they could have. And they have two really solid lines.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 3 players on that team that are probably top 15 picks in next year's draft. I mean, besides Puljujarvi and Laine, the defenseman who plays for London, is it Uelivi? I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but he's a top prospect as well. So I mean, you saw a whole bunch of NHL scouts at that game, and between those guys and Alex Nylander, who to me looks like probably a definite lock for a top 10 pick, and Austin Matthews in the game at 1 o'clock. I mean, this tournament, they were saying on TSN that this tournament is strange in the sense that most of the top players are draft eligible, and it makes people salivate for what's going to happen in Buffalo in June.
Yeah, the one thing about Alex Nylander, why I think he's having a really good tournament, I noticed that when teams have the breakout, he's sometimes a little late getting into the right lane, kind of like when you're fast breaking in basketball and you got to fill the lanes. He's sort of a little late in doing that, but that's about the only thing I could find wrong with his game. Otherwise, he's been really good.
And I picked Sweden to win this tournament, Act, but like once Nylander went down, I mean they didn't lose until this game, but once William Nylander went down and they held him out for precautionary reasons, it was if anybody who comes up against Finland in this tournament in Helsinki is going to be in trouble. If it's U.S. versus Finland, I think the U.S. are really good. I just don't know whether they can beat the Finns on Finnish ice.
This is the hardest tournament to pick. I mean,
this is really
It
hard.
is. It really is.
I went U.S., Canada, Finland, Sweden, and literally 2 minutes before Eck asked me I put Finland as number 1, and I was thinking, could they win it? And they could. And then I put even Sweden number 1. Could they win it? They could. And so I knew of those 4 teams, any of them could win it. Like, it's just such a hair difference between all of them. So that's the way it is.
Yeah, it's what's interesting though is I actually heard Guy Boucher on XM this morning. I don't know if any of you guys heard the interview with Guy Boucher this morning. Really good interview. First of all, a couple things about, and it just ties in because a couple things about it is Guy Boucher was a horrible interview when he was in the NHL. Like this is a guy you couldn't talk to. He had nothing. He was very Tortorella-like, but even more.
But not funny.
But not funny, right? Tortorella, right. Exactly, Dan. Not without a sense of humor, without something you could actually take. Well, he was so obnoxious that's entertaining. No, Guy Boucher was just completely silent, right? So would talk at you, and he gave a great interview, and he talked a lot about because he just coached the Spengler Cup over in Canada, right? Over in Europe, I mean, for Canada, and one of the things he talked about was how the NHL has become very homogenized, and what's interesting about watching other countries is the systems developing in other countries is vast. There's a very big difference now between the way the Swedes play, the Finns play, the Canadians play, and the US and the Americans play, the Russians play. There are some teams in Russia, he said, that are like the old Oilers of like the 80s, like that are just total run and gun teams that have great goalies that depend on that goalie to stop all the 2-on-1s, but they just go. And you don't see that in the NHL where every team basically plays the same style. And that's what I like about this tournament. That's why I think it is so hard to predict because, if we were predicting this as a North American tournament, the U.S. should take apart Finland. They've got all the talent, that you would think about. There's going to be more NHLers from the U.S. team on the Finnish than from the Finnish team for sure. But then when you try to merge the styles, that's where it gets kind of hard. I mean, that's where it gets really difficult.
I got to tell you, some of the great interviews, though, always come out of this tournament. I did one years ago in 2005 where one of the guys, and I think it was on Team Finland, told me his only purpose in one game was to run a certain player, and I wrote about it, and I actually got into the clips. For that, which
Wow.
for the website is kind of hard to do when you're overseas. When you're over in Canada. That was one thing, but in this tournament, if you noticed, in between Canada, Finland, in between the periods, and of course we didn't notice because if you tried to tape Canada, Finland on NHL Network, you got something completely different. So I haven't fully seen the full game of that, and I probably won't. But he said, the Finnish player said, basically that with our physical play, Canada crapped in their pants.
Yes. Yeah, that was.
That's the greatest. You can't top that.
Well,
No, and they did. They totally did. And let's talk about Canada for a second because.
Well, they did early, but you know what? They rallied in that game. That game.
This was the first game. I mean, and I'm now. I guess the same feed. You're getting the Mike Brophy feed, right?
I don't get Mike Brophy.
Okay, so I'm watching. Okay, I'm watching on my Slingbox in Canada. Okay, for those of you, I have a Slingbox in Canada. It's perfectly legal.
Look at that.
Perfectly legal, but I'm watching the TSN feed, right? So I'm getting Mike Brophy, and I'm getting whoever's doing play. I forget his name. I apologize, but
Gord Miller and Ray Ferraro.
Yeah, right, and Brophy is who I really like. Mike Brophy. I've always been a big fan of Brophy. I think he's really good. So he was talking about, and it's really interesting to watch it from the Canada perspective, of course, because you're hearing how the expectations on Canada are so high all the time, and it's very different than watching it in another place. So I'm watching that, and in the first half of the first period of that game, Brophy was saying, that Canada had found a level they hadn't found in the first 4 games of the tournament, in the preliminaries, but not just one new level, like 3 new levels. He thought they had jumped up way higher than he expected, that they were playing finally where people anticipated, maybe even above where they were anticipated. But what's amazing is, and what you see with these young players, is how quickly it can unravel.
Right.
Because of the youth, because there's no player there who can stop the bleeding. And Canada makes a terrible. Let's admit the first 2 Canadian goals that they allowed in that game against Finland were horrible.
Yeah, Blackwood looked really stunned after that.
Yeah, and they were both giveaways by the same player. I forget his name, on the defender who falls down on the second goal and who gives the puck away on the first goal in Canada. One of their assistant captains. I can't think of his name.
But that was, those were the 2 things that we all identified about Team Canada, was the defense wasn't good and their goaltending wasn't great.
Well, part of the problem too is I feel like the just Canada in general put way too much pressure on themselves for a tournament, where the rest of the world, I think, rates it appropriately. It's just a tournament. It's just 7 games. It doesn't define it doesn't define these kids.
I know. No, but
are you taking your talking points from Ron Wilson here? No, but the funny thing is
what it is.
No, but I agree. But the funny thing is that until around the middle of the second period in the deciding in that game against Finland, the 2 big players for Team Canada, Strome and Marner, really didn't do a lot, and then they took over because every Canadian media member was doing huzzas and handsprings in the third period when Marner scored 2 goals and almost scored the go-ahead goal going through the Finnish defense. Yeah. The problem was that Canada had played extremely undisciplined. Jake Virtanen takes 2 penalties in a row. Hicketts shoots the puck over the glass. They shot themselves in the foot. And what Russ was saying, their defense going into the tournament was a big question mark. They didn't play well. And their goaltending, McDonald and Blackwood, I thought played below average at best. So that's what killed them.
But we talked about it. We talked about it before, though. If you look around the world, Canada's just not producing goaltenders like the rest of the world is.
True.
No, they aren't. They aren't, and and it's really been interesting. Finland, whose goaltending is not the greatest either this tournament, is they're okay, but
Kankinen played good today. They're probably going to roll with him, and
they're going to have to roll with him, I think. Yeah, it's funny, Dan. Like telling a Canadian this is just another tournament is like saying the Macy's parade is just another parade. Like the Thanksgiving Day parade.
But it is. It's just some pretty balloons.
It's just a bunch of marching bands and people walking by. But this is, and you're right. But this is such a heavy tradition. I
usually get really drunk the day before Thanksgiving, so I never see the parade.
I never miss the Macy's parade. So there you go. But
look at Canada's record outside of North America. The 2 in Russia, the 1 in Finland, I think the 1 in Sweden, I think it was Malmo. They finished out of the medals every single time.
Well, we've talked about this before, not the U.S. and Canada outside of North America.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, U.S. and Canada outside of North America, in not just this, but the Olympics and other situations have been totally different teams in general.
I think the U.S. team now is set up better for hybrid ice than the Canadian team was.
Yep.
On paper, the Canadian defense was fine, but we saw right into the first game that there was going to be a problem with the way they sort of moved the puck or couldn't move the puck, and so you saw that. I think the U.S. team's in better shape that way, and Nedeljkovic is really making me look good. That's all I can say.
Yeah, he is. Now, before we move on to the U.S. team, when he is, really, though. Before we move on there, I talked to the Flyers, and they're pissed off, about and I was sitting there, and I didn't want to write the Travis. Why the hell is Travis Konechny on the fourth line thing, and why is Travis Sanheim playing 3 minutes a game or whatever? But at the end of the day, I mean, finally Brophy in the game against Finland where they were losing brought it up himself, and he said, maybe there was a theory, and Brophy said, instead of breaking up the top line in Canada, when they weren't performing, what if you would put Travis Konechny on that line with Strome and Marner, because Konechny was such an energy type player and was complete. I'm going to mute Russ out while he gets killed by dogs. But there was a whole thing that you would see that I was very impressed with Travis Konechny in this tournament. I mean,
yeah, he had a good tournament. I mean,
you can unmute yourself, Russ. But I know the Flyers were really upset with the playing time both guys were getting. Sorry, Russ, you're muted. And to me, I really wanted to see. I wanted to see more. I really wanted to see more of them. I would love to have seen, instead of splitting up Strome and Marner so quickly like they did, which is a very Canadian. I'm sorry to say, Canadian thing to do. Like, this is the same thing. It's a quick tournament, but there's no. And I know you can't be super patient, but man, how many times have I seen all the Crosby line combinations in the Olympics? If one game doesn't work,
that was the main criticism of Dave Lowry after the tournament, is the fact that because they started the tournament with John Quenneville on the line with Strome and Marner, and then after the first game they broke up Strome and Marner, and then it was a rotation of Virtanen and Point and all these other guys, and at the end of the Finland game, Strome and Marner were I think they were playing together. It was with them and with Virtanen. So, they ended up going back to what they had originally planned, and they went through all these machinations and ended up right where they started.
But the thing that I would have liked to have seen Konechny on that line is that neither one of those guys, they're both so skilled, but neither one was doing what Travis Konechny was doing, which was going and getting the puck. Actually going into the corner, retrieving the puck. And that's why he was creating opportunities whenever he was out there, which was usually on the penalty kill or in very few moments. They really played a guy who's almost 1.5 points per game in the OHL as a checker in Travis Konechny. It was Russ. What were your thoughts on that whole thing?
Yeah, I saw that he was getting limited. I don't get crazy about it.
Yeah.
And I guess I could understand fans of teams getting crazy about it.
And teams,
But I didn't think the coaching's really what lost it for Canada. I didn't. I thought there were just bad plays on the ice. They knocked in one of their own goals. They slacked up on D. We can't always blame the coach on that. You can blame the line combinations. That's fine. That's totally fair. At times Sanheim looked good, but at times he didn't show anything. And so I think that's what they saw. I mean, if Sanheim would have looked as good as I've seen him look in any regular season game, they would have gladly moved him up the ladder on defense. I can tell you that because their defense wasn't playing well. But
they had the worst penalty killing in the tournament, Russ.
Yeah,
the absolute worst of the 10 teams. They had the worst penalty killing, and
that points to your goaltending and your defense.
Yep. Yeah, and I think in terms of player management, I think I agree with what Ak is saying. Player management was a big negative for them. I thought they overplayed Hicketts and Shabbat like crazy.
I think so too. But I think
they had
that's because they had to.
And a guy like Matthew Barzal, who I thought was playing great early in the tournament, I didn't notice him a ton in the game against Finland. I mean, I know only in in the overtime when it was 4-on-4 and his puck possession skills were apparent that they have him out there, but a lot of times I didn't notice him in that game, and I don't think he played a ton of minutes.
Well, the way I look at this tournament, which is completely unpopular to the way most people look at it, is the way the wins and losses aren't the end of the world. I look at this as a preview of what's to come for next year's draft, and also look a little crystal ball of these kids finally getting the limelight shine on them in big situations for guys who are going to be at NHL next year. The way I look at it is the Islanders had a really good World Juniors. Because if you look at Bouvier, you look at Barzal, you look at Soderstrom, you have to be really happy.
Yeah, and I think that's the right way to look at the tournament for most people. I mean, and there's always this nationalistic pride as well, definitely going on, especially in Canada, and more so in the U.S. than ever before, I think. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I look at from the Philadelphia perspective, I thought they had a strong tournament as well.
They did. Yep.
Provorov has looked great.
Was getting more ice time than anybody they had in that tournament. He's playing well. He's not going to be a big time scorer, but he's playing a ton ton for Sweden. A ton.
Yeah, he is. Lindholm, he did.
And Toronto as well. I mean,
absolutely. Timashov, yes.
Timashov was is to me the biggest surprise. I mean, I expected him to be decent. I didn't expect him to be behind Kempe and Nylander, the best player on Sweden, which I think maybe he's even up there with Kempe, because I thought he had a great first game. He had a really good game today. Kapanen has slowly started to play better. He had 2 assists today. But the one thing was obviously the Nylander thing, and Russ and I have been going back and forth on this the last few days. Lou Lamoriello goes over there on Saturday, and basically it looks like he threw down the gauntlet and said, if he's not 100%, he's going back to Toronto. And even before the game today, he was sent back to Toronto yesterday.
Which is what I told you I thought would happen at the Winter Classic.
Yeah.
So,
that's the truth. I was surprised by that too. And that's another thing we have to talk about.
There is one player. I do want to mention one player.
Yeah,
and as well as Timashov played, Rasmus Asplund made him better. And this is a kid who a lot of people had pegged maybe going 30th in the draft, and I think he boosted his draft stock a lot. Yeah,
no, that's for sure. I do agree with that completely. Now let's move on to today's game, which is going to come up in about 30 minutes from now. So, if you're watching this later, it's already happened, and we'll look brilliant or like idiotic right now as we talk about this. But don't you wish you could just go forward a little bit in time? That time machine I'm working on the other room just isn't done yet. But let's start here. So the U.S. coming in. I mean, Austin Matthews has had a huge tournament, obviously, as was expected. But it's not always. You don't always get that, from the superstar.
He's on another level.
He is on
I keep trying to tell people he's better than Jack Eichel, and when you say that, people get mad at me. They absolutely get mad at me. They hiss at me. That's
not an insult at Jack Eichel either. Jack Eichel's going to be a fantastic NHL player. It's just that Matthews might project to be higher.
Russ, what did he mean? He missed the cutoff by like 3 days or something like that from last year's draft.
You can tell he's used to playing against men. He's more mature.
Everybody is saying right now that if Matthews was in that draft, he was either going second or third, which means he's on par with Eichel. So
absolutely.
We'll see 5 or 6 years down the line who's better. But right now, I mean, it's really a pointless argument to say who's better, Eichel or Matthews. They're both really good players.
I'm just saying at that age, at that moment, Matthews is better. I'm not saying today, this moment. I'm saying at that age.
I actually
think Matthews or David or McDavid.
No. McDavid is. I mean, I actually think.
No, McDavid's Canadian, so he has to be better.
Right, he has to be better. Is that the rule?
That's the rule.
I actually think that Eichel had a better supporting cast last year than Matthews has this year, and the U.S. has done better this year than last year.
Yeah, it's true. I agree with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. But he's very, very calm. He's really got a swagger to him that's unmistakable. His size makes him very different than McDavid in my mind. He's a very different kind of player.
Yeah, he is.
Much more Lindros-like than not with the evil, angry part of Lindros, but much more Lindros-like in the way he moves the puck and the way he commands space. Like just the people just leave him alone.
I think he's a Ryan Getzlaf type of big number one center. Not the Ryan Getzlaf who scored 3 goals, but the Ryan Getzlaf who won Stanley Cups.
No, I think that's a good comparison. Like a Getzlaf who likes to shoot the puck.
Yeah, I think a little bit more. I don't know.
I think Lindros was a good comparison though too. I do.
Yeah. No, he really does have. I mean, and I don't know what kind of.
But he skates with his head up.
He skates with his head up, right? But he definitely has that same kind of. He scores the same kind of goals Lindros scored. More than Getzlaf, who scored a lot of wrist shots from high in the slot. Like you think of Getzlaf, and Lindros scored some of those, but I really think of those with Getzlaf as like those are the highs. Like Matthews will score the goal, within the crease. He'll bang things home. A lot more like almost like
Lindros, he will go end to end.
Yes,
can't do that.
Right.
But the one thing that the U.S. has to be concerned about today is they seem to have a mental block when it comes to playing Russia. And Russia definitely has talent. I mean, they won that game against the Danes in spite of themselves. I mean, they tie up the game with less than a minute left to go, and they win it in overtime on was it Kamenev's goal.
Yeah.
But They have a lot of talent, but they just seem so disorganized and disjointed that they almost lost to Denmark. So to me,
but I don't think that's a disgrace anymore. Denmark's really on the rise.
No,
I'm not saying they're on the same level, but if you look at the teams like the Danes and the Swiss, where they were 10 years ago and where they are now.
I'm not putting down the Danes, Dan. I'm just saying that they had won one game in the World Juniors in their country's history,
right.
and they lost to Russia last year. I think it was 8-0, and they came within 44 seconds of beating the Russians. To me, that was a statement on how much the Danes have improved, but it's also a statement on how disorganized the Russians are.
That's valid.
But that's the thing. I think it had to do with the goaltending. How do you not have Ilya Samsonov in that game?
It makes no sense.
The Russian Ice Hockey Federation is crazy. I understand their other goalie plays in Finland. I don't care. Like, if I'm on that team, if I'm the GM, I don't care about that.
But Samsonov might be the best goalie in the whole tournament.
He didn't even play. It's great.
Right. Based on talent and based on organization, I think the U.S. should win today. But for some reason, they lose to the Russians when in these situations. So to me, it's a 50-50 proposition. I think this game
it's a little higher. I would go 70-30. I would. I think besides Matthews, look, Christian Dvorak, he's finally getting a little notoriety. He's not going to score every shift or anything, but he's sort of the glue of that team, and he holds everything together. He makes smart defensive plays. He's always in on the offense. You know, DeBrincat now is finally starting to feel healthy, and he's contributing a bit more. That gives them another shot that they didn't have a couple games ago. I think there's plenty there. I think we could also say Ron Wilson's been misplaying guys. Brant, look, to me, Belpedio and Fortunato should not be on the same power play.
Yeah.
They're okay offensive defensemen. I would take one of those guys off and put another forward out there on the power play. I would do it because they have too much talent. Even if you want to move Matthews back there because you just want to be safe with the puck, that's fine. But those two defensemen on the power play hurt them when they went 0 for 8 that game. It did.
Yeah, the best defenseman in this tournament has been Provorov. I mean, I see him play, and he's going to the front of the net. He's jumping into the offense.
He's an exciting player to watch.
He does that.
So maybe finally, Flyers fans, when I wrote in training camp that Provorov was faster than Sanheim, it was real. Because they're all yelling at me, that's impossible. He can't be.
No, it's real.
I said, the one moment that stuck out with me, that game I saw in Allentown, a preseason game against the Islanders.
Yes.
And he was in that game. I think it was the last game he played before they sent him back. And he was phenomenal in that game. And the play that I will constantly remember was he came in, and he's been doing this in this tournament too. This is obviously one of his moves now that we've seen him play a lot. Where he comes over the blue line, he drops the puck. He drops the puck to another defender or a winger or somebody who's on the boards, and then he goes right to the net.
Yes, he drives the lane.
He goes and he stands there and he screens the goalie.
How many defensemen do that now?
How many defensemen will screen the goalie? So he gets it, but he did it when he was playing in the Flyers preseason game. The Flyers players did not know how to react to it. It was hilarious. He stood there and the Islanders players didn't move him. And he was just standing. He got there. He's so fast. He got there within a second, and he's there standing. And it felt like he was in there for like an uncomfortably inordinate amount of time, standing there by himself in front of the Islanders goalie. And you're thinking, what's going to happen? The Islanders steal the puck back, and he still has plenty of time to get it back. He's just got that kind of speed. He knows he can go end to end and catch teams. He's fun to watch.
I can't wait till he comes over. He's going to be an exciting player to watch.
Yeah, he's definitely, he's got just gobs of skill. Yeah, and, he is faster than Sanheim. Sanheim's going to be a great player for them, too. But
I feel like he has that it factor, too. He has that something that makes you want to watch.
He definitely does, because he likes to control the play.
Yeah.
He likes to quarterback things.
When he comes over, he'll be their best defenseman. That's
fair. That's very fair.
It's just the way it is. People could say what they want. Gostisbehere is a terrific kid, and he's a really good player. He's not a great defenseman yet. Provorov is a great defenseman already.
Right, he plays both ends, and he's so friggin' fast. That his speed is insane. I mean, for defense, it's just to have that kind of speed, you can do a lot more. He can do a lot. You can do a lot of things other defensemen won't even try. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the NHL handles that. All right, let's go to Jonathan Drouin for a second before we go anywhere else. Yeah, I've been talking about this for over a year now, and
you were right. You were on the boat first here.
Every once in a while, considering that's all I do is write hockey rumors. It should be a little bit more than that. But every once in a while, in this day and age where hockey rumors are few and far between, No, this I heard about last year. This time I was talking to somebody involved with the Panthers organization. He said, "Well, said to me, Jonathan Drouin is available," and I was shocked. I'm like, "No, that can't possibly be true." And if the Panthers know, I'm like, the Panthers had a shot at him. Yeah, he was basically put out there. Anybody could take, and this is the Lightning trading him to the Panthers. That's kind of crazy.
Well, okay. Russ and I were talking about this yesterday because I think it's realistic that Drouin can get traded before the trade deadline. Maybe it's something that waits until after the season. It seems like Alan Walsh is holding Yzerman's feet to the fire.
Not a good idea by Alan Walsh, by the way.
No, it's stupid, but that's Alan Walsh. But
Thank you. You said it.
Yeah, the point. Yeah, please. He's already blocked me on Twitter, so bye, Alan.
Oh wow!
He proactively blocked me on Twitter. All right, I'm gonna throw this out there. I've never. I don't think I've ever said this before. He is the first person I've ever. I mean, and I have his cell phone number. I have talked to him on the phone. I have texted with him years ago. Something happened. Won't get into it. But he proactively, when Twitter started, I saw him on there. I'm like, I went to follow him, and you cannot follow him. You've been blocked. So I would proactively block.
Yeah, he blocked me.
That's impressive. Both of you. That's impressive. I'm so impressed.
During the lockout when he was being a blowhard, and I couldn't stand it, so I started.
He's very persuasive. I don't know if have you ever dealt with him one-on-one, Russ, or anything?
No, not one-on-one. Thankfully, no.
All right, he is very persuasive. There's two agents in this hockey world. One is sort of not in this same game anymore, and that's Rich Winter, who has this. But Rich Winter, they both, Alan Walsh and Rich Winter, have some incredible ideas for the game. Like the kind you can talk to them, and they really know. They throw some ideas out there and I've had these discussions with them, and they'll talk to you for hours about it, and they have really good ideas. And they're very persuasive in what they do. So they both believe they have a hell of a lot of power. And Walsh,
annoying surprising. Walsh is if let's say Casey Kazikas is one of his guys. If Casey Kazikas, gets an assist, he'll put 4 posts about it. It's like, stop.
I know.
Yeah, and they don't speak internet very well. Rich Winter knows not to do it, but Walsh still does it. I think speaking internet is a whole other language, and that's. And I'm not saying that Walsh is a terrible person or anything like that.
No,
I'm just saying he's an agent. He gets his stuff done for the players. He obviously is successful at what he does, way more successful than I am. So, but I'm just sitting there and I'm saying he's absolutely a good agent, but he does have his history. I mean, remember Halak and the Price thing with Halak and Price, that all going on. And
he's hurting his client here, though. He is.
I just think he's bucking to be hockey's answer to Drew Rosenhaus, and that sometimes doesn't help your clients. And in this situation,
yeah, you're right, Mike. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're exactly right. And I'm going to finish your thought there. Hockey doesn't work with the Drew Rosenhaus. The hockey mentality is very different than baseball or football. The hockey players like people like Steve Yzerman, don't want to do this too, because Yzerman will go opposite. They will not move him just for the sake of not moving him.
They'll tell you to shut up and go away.
Right, they'll be so pissed off, and that's why I kind of worry, because Duran's a good kid. I kind of worry about this move. I think this could really bury him.
My question is why? Why is it not a fit there? What has he done to think he merits all of this attention just because of where he was drafted? I don't understand.
I can tell you, but I'll see what Mike has to say first. Go ahead.
No, this is a symptom of what's going on in Tampa with John Cooper. John Cooper is a conformist coach. He wants you to fit into his system. If you don't, you're ostracized, which is the reason I believe Steven Stamkos is going to end up leaving Tampa Bay via free agency, or force them to make a trade during the summer before he becomes a free agent. I think Drouin is an offensive player. He should be a top 6 player. Maybe he doesn't play defense that great right now, and Cooper doesn't like the fact that he doesn't buy into his mode of operations, so he ends up in Syracuse. Now, what Russ and I were talking about is what Yzerman can realistically expect to get back for Drouin, because he was the 3rd pick overall. He's got a lot of talent. He's on his entry-level deal. He's got 2 years left on his entry-level deal, or 1 or 2 years left. I think it's 1. The problem is if a team like, say, a Chicago or a Washington, a contender, wants to get a guy who is a low salary guy, they're probably going to have to give up a couple top draft picks and probably the best prospect in their organization to get him.
Yep.
And the thing is, with the bonus level on that top 5 contract, it's not going to be cost effective for a team like Chicago or Washington because with the bonuses he could make over $3 million if he hits them. So it may not make sense for them to go out and trade for a guy like that. That's why I think a team like an Edmonton or a team like a Nashville who needs offense, or a team like Toronto who's going to sell off half their roster might be a better fit for a Drouin in a trade. But I don't think Yzerman, his feet are not being held to the fire right now. He's probably going to wait till the offseason.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I see Colorado as a fit, too. I could see them trading Rantanen and a couple of picks. I mean, look, Drouin played great with McKinnon. Drouin does not play defense. He's never going to play defense.
Right.
They had to know that when they drafted him, and John Cooper should have just dealt with it. This is a big faux pas for Cooper because you're playing like Alex Killorn instead of a guy with world-class speed and great hands. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. He's probably the second-best skater on that team.
They drafted him to be Marty St. Louis. Like, that's
but to me, so far, he just seems like he shows flashes of being a very good player, but he just seems like a perimeter player.
Well, you're right.
And if that's the case, why didn't he just take Seth Jones?
No, because he's never had a chance to fit in, never had real line mates. Remember, they were playing him on the fourth line to start for a while. They've moved him around so much. Yet
Tyler Seguin started on the fourth line.
Whatever. They're different players. He still racked up.
I'm just saying though, it's like this is a team that made the Stanley Cup Finals last year. It's a little harder to crack that lineup.
And I think Dan's got a point here, Russ, because I think that that there is a definite hockey culture thing about Seguin started on the fourth line. He got traded too, though. Remember?
Sure,
and he also did. But
there's
at
some
the same
reasons
point,
for that though.
No, but they're the same kind of reasons because a lot of them are the same reasons that Duran's in the spot now because they're kind of comparable because I mean, Seguin turned into a better player, but at the same time. No, I mean, really, let me finish this because they really – I remember last year sitting with – I think Kevin even said it on this podcast, but I was sitting with Kevin Allen watching the finals in the press box for one of these finals games, and he said, if you watch Jonathan Drouin, all you have to do is watch him to know why he's not playing more. Because he really was not playing well. And when he got the puck, he was – now this is – you can blame teams for, not giving the guy confidence, not giving him, not putting him in position for him to succeed.
It definitely gets in your head.
Yeah, it gets in his head. So it got to the point where he felt like he had to do something – that they didn't really need him to do, but he would go out there and he would try to make he would try to make Jonathan Drouin type plays, and he was playing with unskilled players when he was trying to do that.
Right.
And you run into
That's fair.
You run into all these situations, so his confidence went down and down and down to the point where when he was on the ice, he was not good.
And that's
in 89 games, he's got 40 points.
That's not bad.
It's really pretty good.
That's not bad. No.
He hasn't had good line mates. He gets no power play time. These are things he was used to in his career and would get a lot more points if he was getting it.
Don't you have to earn that though?
He's playing third and fourth line, and playing not with talented offensive players, right. like you mentioned with Seguin. Seguin was playing the right wing instead of playing center with the Bruins and playing third, fourth line. And there's nowhere other than a team that was competing for a Stanley Cup and playing under Claude Julien where Tyler Seguin would have been playing the right wing on the third or fourth line. So it's circumstance. But what you have here, the only way I see Drouin being traded by the deadline is if Tampa gets a player who's got a reasonable salary that can help them win this year. And there are players out there for teams that might not be in the play. They have term on their contract that might be a fit, but they're not. I don't think like Nino Niederreiter, who was a fourth or fifth pick overall with the Islanders. They ended up getting a third-round pick in Cal Clutterbuck. I will bet you anything when Drouin is traded,
and they might have won that trade.
Right. Well, no, but the thing is, I bet you anything that the taint of what has gone on in Tampa with Drouin drives his value down to the point that they won't get equal value. They'll get value, but they won't get equal value.
No, because scouts know. See, Drouin has way more upside than Niederreiter, way more than Torres. I'm tired of seeing those comparisons because people are expecting those trades to go exactly that way. He has a lot more than that. I'm telling you, if you put him on the top power play, top line with McKinnon, there would be magic.
Yeah, there would be, and I agree. A lot of this has to do with the fact that we're talking, and the Seguin comparison is apt in a lot of ways because you're talking again about a rookie who everybody knows is too talented not to put in the lineup, playing on a team that's in a Stanley Cup run.
Right.
I mean, both in Boston and in Tampa.
Yes.
Last year, I mean, so you're looking at you have to play him because, like you said, Russ, you're playing these other guys. You got to play Jonathan Drouin, but at the same time. You don't. If you're in a Stanley Cup team, you already have your top six.
But they're not a Stanley Cup team this year. He's got no excuse this year. This year, Tampa Bay stinks.
Oh, right. But they still are playing. they are playing as if they will eventually get it together and they'll be fine. Like they haven't changed a thing from last year.
We don't know that. We don't know that they're going to be fine.
Well, we don't know that, but that's how they're playing it. I mean, that's how they're coaching right now. And that could be Cooper's problem. Cooper keeps saying, "We'll get this together. We'll get this together."
And if Yzerman can get one or two pieces that helps him in a postseason run, then I think he will pay the price of trading Durant. Otherwise, I don't see Tampa making a deal where it's future for future. Because Durant can come back and bite him if he goes someplace and becomes another Marty St. Louis. But if he gets players that can help them make a Stanley Cup run, then he can say, okay, well, I gave up the future for the now, and that was the price that I paid.
I have a name that I've heard. I have a name that I've heard and a team that I've heard. Ready for this one? Tell me what you think of this. Shattenkirk.
I like it for Tampa.
No, I think it would drive Hitch crazy.
Would never work out.
Yeah, it wouldn't work. I can't see St. Louis doing it.
I know for a fact that St. Louis is in on him. I know for a fact.
Oh, yeah.
And Hitch is in. Hitch is okay with it. This is not for whatever Hitch sees him as a different kind of player. Well, Hitch is very good at compartmentalizing players. I mean, he does like his. If you look at Hitchcock's teams, he's had players like this.
Yeah, but he ran Patrick Sharp out of town.
Well,
but he also got Mike McDonough. I mean, I remember Mike McDonough, and other things that happened. And Brett Hull, that players that he were like this, that he did make work.
Shattenkirk would be a fantastic fit with Hedman too.
Right.
Well, the only thing that St. Louis is so starved for offense right now. I mean, they were pathetic in Toronto on Saturday. They just can't. Other than Tarasenko, they can't generate offense. And Shattenkirk has got 1 year left in his contract, but I don't know. I mean, I think they'd have to get more than Durant. They have to get somebody who is a known commodity who can score, and not somebody who is all potential. That to me, that doesn't fit. Maybe they're in on it, but it doesn't fit.
Here's the funny thing. It's clear that Cooper's playing favorites because if you look up Killorn's point totals, like 17 points in 36 games, and Drouin has like 8 in 19 games. There's basically very little difference, except if you actually played Drouin a lot, he would get more points than Alex Killorn. But Killorn played in the AHL with John Cooper. That's the answer.
Right.
He's sticking with his Norfolk Admirals, Russ.
Well, yeah, and a lot of that comes back to what we've talked about before, players to sell your system, right? Because his system right now is struggling, so he needs as many players around who he knows will buy into his system, and that's the system that he's going to...
Well, the encouraging thing is Stamkos has started to score. They're starting to come around. I think Yzerman is going to be busy at the deadline because they need to fill a few holes.
Well, they're not all coming around. I mean, Ryan Callahan's got 13 points.
And they're also getting terrible play out of Braden Coburn and like on defense. Yes. Coburn and a couple other defenders are not sticking up to what they did last year in the playoffs, and that's why they need to go. They need to make a move like this one. Like Shattenkirk comes in there and immediately. That makes Tampa a totally different team.
It changes their team completely.
But and the St. Louis Blues, for whatever reason, I mean they were shopping Shattenkirk at the deadline. For whatever reason, Shattenkirk is not part of their long range plans. I don't know what
because they know that it's going to probably cost them upwards of $7
I think that's definitely a big part of it.
I keep hearing Shattenkirk in the Northeast for like 2 years now.
Yeah, and now if you're Tampa, okay, and you're looking at, okay, well, we're not going to be able to sign him if we sign Stamkos, but we don't know if Stamkos is going to be here. So if he's here, he's not here, then we can sign him. So
how devastating would it be though if they lost Stamkos and Drouin? It would be devastating.
Yeah, no, it is.
It would be. Yes, it would be.
Yeah,
which is why they cannot let Stamkos walk at the deadline.
They don't have it.
You gotta get something for him.
Dan, they don't. Well,
they're out of the playoffs.
He's got a no-move clause. He's not going to waive it unless he wants to go someplace to win a Stanley Cup.
Tell him where he wants to go. I'm like, all right, well, we'll send you there. Because I would take the first-round draft pick and prospect, but even though it might not be what I normally get, as opposed to flipping his rights for a third-round pick at the draft.
Tampa's still close enough to the playoffs to not think that way, though. They only have to get into the playoffs in their head. I mean, they get into the playoffs.
True, but there's some teams in front of them playing good hockey.
If it gets to the point where they miss the playoffs by 2 points, and they haven't moved Stamkos, and they don't think they can sign him, they've lost. They already lost.
Oh yeah, they've lost in that situation. No question about it.
And Dan, they're going to get more. They're going to get more than that for Stamkos, even if it's the negotiating rights, because teams will want to, Tampa Bay will want to get something back for Stamkos.
Right, but they would get more at the deadline.
No, what I'm saying is teams will want to clear cap space to sign Stamkos.
That's
so
fair.
Say a team like Toronto is interested. I wouldn't be, do tell me they're not going to trade Nazem Kadri if they have a chance to get Stamkos or enough or something like that. They'll trade most of anybody on their roster to give that salary to Tampa Bay if the Tampa Bay thinks those players are useful for them going forward. So I think they'll get.
That's a great point, Mike.
Speaking of Chicago, a minor trade between the Blackhawks and the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
Mike, fill us in.
I actually think it was not the world's most exciting deal as Russ.
It actually is bigger than. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not. Go ahead.
I think Richard Panik will eventually be called up by the Blackhawks. I saw that little Slovakian connection between him and Marian Hossa. Richard Panik is an NHL forward.
This proves there is no panic in Toronto, by the way.
There you go. He just didn't fit with Mike Babcock. He went to training camp. He didn't impress Babcock. He got put on waivers. He was sent to the Marlies. He played great for the Toronto Marlies. Was on their first line with Nylander. Put up a bunch of points. Jeremy Morin is basically an AHL guy who's been up and down the last 5 years. I think it was an AHL for AHL trade, with the Leafs gaining a little bit of room in cap space, and the Blackhawks getting a guy who can be probably on their taxi squad in the playoffs or maybe on their fourth line. He's a decent forward. I think it's like a net plus for Chicago, but this is the first of many moves for Toronto. This is another Dave Nonis, Brian Burke, either draft pick or acquisition. They've moved out. They've moved out over a dozen since Lamoriello and Shanahan and Babcock took over. There will be a lot more in the next 2 months.
Right. No, I do agree with that. Although I don't know, I've always liked Morin. He was traded last year about the same time, wasn't he? I remember he was moved from Minnesota to Chicago, right?
He never increased his foot speed and was never good enough in the crease. So he would get some points once in a while. He's got good hands, but he can never get in a position or hold position, and so that's where he falls short.
Yeah, he can't. He doesn't have the speed to get to the goal scoring positions. If he can get there, he can score.
Right.
I mean, I heard talk to somebody who told me
he's a nice AHL player.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I did talk to somebody who told me, and this is rare to get something like this, get information like this out of Toronto. But I do have somebody who's close to Babcock in that situation, and this is a guy that Babcock likes. Actually, this is actually a player that Babcock watched play. Remember where Detroit used to play against him more often. This is a player he actually does like. So he might see some kind of. Babcock is very much a pieces in the puzzle type coach. He might see this as a fourth liner who can do something for him.
And that's very possible. And what is going to happen is as players are traded off the Leaf roster, guys like Parento and Boyes and Grabner and all these guys for draft picks, they will move up some of the more experienced guys from the Marlies. One of them probably be Morin. If Morin is somebody that Babcock likes, he'll get an opportunity in the last 25 to 30 games to prove his worth. And another thing, Panik was making almost $1 million to qualify him in the summer. His salary would have been over $1 million. Morin is making $800,000, so it's a minuscule amount, but maybe that was another motivation for him. So.
No, I think it plays into it because they this is a team that, although they're not up against the cap now, will eventually be up against the cap. There's no question about that. Toronto is never long for being not up against the cap.
So let's wait. Let's wait. Yeah, let's waste the last 5 minutes on John Scott.
That's about all it deserves.
But first of all, is he in the NHL right now?
Yeah,
no.
He's on their taxi squad.
No, he's on their taxi squad. Okay, so all right. First of all, not just Scott, but Jágr, too. I mean, that's got to be mentioned as well because Jágr went out there and said, I don't want to be on the team. So the fans have voted a player who is not in the NHL and a player who doesn't want to play in the game into the All-Star game. So let's give it up to the fans. Good job, guys. There's definitely no question. I mean, I'm all for paper ballots, guys. I'm a energy conservation person, but we need to get the NHL's got to figure out how the hell to run their computer systems better.
Yeah,
because there's no question that this is being done, by hackers.
Well, this is my line of the weekend. The only joke bigger than John Scott making the All-Star game is the All-Star game. The All-Star game is a joke.
It's an exhibition game. Who cares?
Here's the funny thing. John Scott's never played in 3-on-3, ever.
Right.
Yeah, no, he's never. Will he even play?
It's not like it decides home ice advantage.
That's true. Will he even play? Maybe he won't even go out on the ice.
I'm curious what they'll do with this.
It's pathetic, and they need to.
Will he come up with an injury at the last second?
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. He's going to come up with a sprained ankle.
I don't know. Does he want to put himself in that situation? I mean, if you're John Scott, see the reason I think this is
computer. He's marketing himself. It can't hurt him.
Right.
Yeah, but this is computer generated because we're not talking about like just an enforcer getting picked. We're talking about actually an unpopular enforcer getting picked up, like a guy that most people don't even like that getting. This is not like say Matthew Barnaby in the day or whatever.
If George Peros got voted in, people
George Peros, exactly. Yeah. That's a totally different situation. This is absolutely a generated system hack thing, and it just takes me out. The NHL couldn't have had hired somebody to go through and figure out how they did it and who did it, and then take out those votes because that really should have. But Jágr's a different situation. Jágr is more, and I think is more interesting because I haven't heard if he's going to go or not. I haven't heard anything about it.
It doesn't sound like he wants to go. Actually.
He doesn't want to go, and he knows he shouldn't go because if I was him, what I would do is I would find who's going to be the coach of that. We don't even know who's going to be the coach yet, right?
Of the
Atlantic
division.
Atlantic, excuse me.
Jágr's never been a big all-star guy.
He needs to tweak something in the third period.
If I was him, I would go and I would go as a coach. I would say, listen, I want to go as a coach. I'm the captain of the team, so I'm the captain of the team, so I'm going to coach the team.
If it's based on the first place coach of that division, it could be his own coach in Gerard Gallant.
Right, and he should go to Gallant and say, "Can you hire me as your assistant for the All-Star game?" And then Gallant and Jágr go together, and that's the way to fix this for Jágr, and that would be great.
That makes sense.
That would be great. People would love it. He would be there. He would be honored. He does. It's not that he wants to go and gamble for. Well, maybe it is, but I don't think it is. But, I think that this is Jágr, but I think that at the end of the day, that's more likely. He just doesn't want to be out there 3-on-3 because he doesn't have the speed, and that's not his game. No. I mean, I would love to have seen Jágr in his heyday at 3-on-3, but this is not his game right now.
Right.
So. And I think
let him play in the skills competition and then
play in the skills competition and then say
John's got his 5 career goals. So there you go.
Say I'm a coach and hand it off to Barkov or somebody else on his team and say I want as part of this team I'm gonna pick Barkov. I'm gonna make him the captain or whatever. Just do that because there's plenty of players on Florida who's won 10 games in a row now. To put onto that team. So
or Ekblad.
But the best thing I want to say is because game's about to start. Jágr's got to start getting MVP consideration.
Oh, yeah.
In the NHL, when you look at the NHL right now, as crazy as it sounds, Russ, he is an MVP.
True Doughty.
Yeah, or Jamie Benn, or Alex Ovechkin. There's a lot. There's
a ton of guys.
Thomas Greiss.
But what if,
Hey, Thomas Greiss has been the Islanders' MVP.
Hey, look, I've talked about Thomas Greiss more this year than I ever have, but MVP.
He's been fantastic with Halak being banged up all year.
No doubt.
At least let's, finally get him the Masterton Trophy, for crying out loud.
Yes, absolutely.
I agree with that. I think, and honestly, the personality of Jágr over the last couple of years, and the stuff that's come out on Twitter, that he said on Twitter over the last few months, is a complete departure from the Jágr of the Pittsburgh days or the New York Rangers days.
Oh, there's no
comparison. No, you're right.
Here's what Doughty's doing. Doughty's got 24 points. He's averaging almost 28 minutes of ice time.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on Doughty. He's one of the best players in the last decade in the NHL too.
His resurgence has a lot to do with Doughty. It does.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. But how are the Kings without Doughty? How are the Panthers without Jágr? This is a discussion we can have another day. But
yeah.
There's no question that Jágr has been such a huge impact for a player that was picked up, for nothing at the trade deadline last year.
No, they gave up a little bit for him. They gave up 2 picks for him.
Yeah, but still, to become your MVP,
No, that's true.
And he is Jágr. So anyway, that's all the time we have today. Go and watch the games, guys, and gals. I hope there's gals watching once in a while. Remember,
if there are gals watching, please contact Mike.
Please contact. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Talk to you soon.